But in other news, if you remember Trump's interview with NBC, where he was talking about the Venezuelan gangs taking over apartment buildings in Aurora, Colorado, and the interviewer said, "Oh, that never happened. The police said that never happened." And Trump said, yeah, it did. We played it all the time in my campaign rally. Well, just the other day, it came out that 14 gang members from this particular apartment complex were arrested due to kidnapping, beating, and torturing 2 Americans who lived there. And the police chief came out and admitted it and scolded Biden's White House. Watch.
It was a male and a female. They were accosted by approximately 13 to 15 armed individuals. They were pistol whipped, they were beat, they were mistreated. One of the male was actually stabbed, he had a stab wound. So does that fall in the category of torture for me? Yeah, it does. There is a high assumption that they may be affiliated with the TDA gang. I had a discussion with an individual from the White House, and that occurred back on September the 23rd, I believe. And that person basically told me that, hey, once these immigrants get across the border, that's all we really care about. And to me, that's a problem.
Wow, those are powerful words. That was the police chief in Aurora, Colorado.
Just another reason why nobody trusts the mainstream media. They have a narrative that they want to shape, and they don't care about common sense or the facts as it comes to reporting on these things. And someone still needs to answer the question, what was the purpose of having an open border and allowing all these dangerous people to just come unobstructed into the country? The police chief literally said, somebody at the Biden White House that he spoke to said, all we care about is that these illegals get across the border. After that, it's your problem. So it's almost as if they knew that heinous, dangerous people would be coming in through their open border policies, yet they didn't care at all. Any policy that has the objective to destabilize the country and harm its citizens should be looked at as treason and certainly at bare minimum investigated. Now, just as a brief reminder how salacious and complicit the media is in forming this narrative that nothing was a problem, here's an interview J.D. Vance did with a reporter where she just downplays the whole Venezuelan gang taking over apartment issue by saying, it's only limited to just a handful of apartment complexes. Watch.
The incidents were limited to a handful of apartment complexes, and the mayor said our dedicated police officers have acted on those concerns. A handful of problems.
Only, Martha, do you hear yourself? Only a handful of apartment complexes in America were taken over by Venezuelan gangs, and Donald Trump is the problem and not Kamala Harris's open border? Americans are so fed up with what's going on, and they have every right to be. And I really find this exchange, Martha, sort of interesting because you seem to be more focused with nitpicking everything that Donald Trump has said rather than acknowledging that apartment complexes in the United States of America are being taken over by violent gangs. I worry so much more about that problem than anything else here. We've got to get American communities in a safe space again. And unfortunately, when you let people in by the millions, most of whom are unvetted, most of whom you don't know who they really are, you're going to have problems like this. Kamala Harris, 94 executive orders that undid Donald Trump's successful border policies. We knew this stuff would happen. They bragged about opening the border, and now we have the consequences, and we're living with it. We can do so much better, but frankly, we're not going to do better, Martha, unless Donald Trump calls this stuff out. I'm glad that he did.
I don't care whether you're right or you're left-leaning in your politics. Everybody should agree that American apartment complexes getting taken over by gangs is unacceptable. We should all agree that we do not want our country descending into some third world dystopia where the rule of law is no longer a thing and the streets are just ran and terrorized by violent gangs. So for her to downplay that even a few, even though we know it's more than a few, but just to admit that a few apartment complexes have been taken over and overrun by gangs where they're charging the residents there essentially a tax, mafia style, pay us to protect you. Protect us from who? Protect you from us kind of deal is just completely despicable. And the Biden White House and the media ought to be held accountable for this kind of disregard for the American people's safety.